Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive, incredibly frustrating problem that almost all of us deal with, but let's be real, very few actually know how to solve. Chronic joint tightness and that locked-up lower back pain. If you've been grinding it out in the gym or just surviving the 9-to-5 desk life and you constantly feel stiff and totally broken down by the end of the day, well, this is exactly what you need to hear.
So, why are your hips still tight? Let's just be completely honest for a second here. You probably sit at a desk all day for work, right? But you genuinely care about your health. Maybe you train a few times a week, you stretch all the time, you're doing all the supposedly right things. And yet, your hips, your hamstrings, and your lower back, they still feel like they belong to someone twice your age. Your lower back stubbornly locks up after a simple commute, and your hamstrings pull the absolute second you try to do something even mildly athletic, like, reaching down to tie your shoes. It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it?
There's a quote from our source material that perfectly captures this feeling. Cool, years of stretching, still can't move properly. Time to actually fix it. I mean, talk about validating your frustration. Your current routine is failing you, and honestly, it's not your fault. Passive stretching just isn't working anymore. Sitting on the living room floor after a workout, yanking on a muscle and counting to 30 while staring blankly at your phone, yeah, that's just not going to cut it. We really need to transition away from that outdated mindset and look at the core physiological problem that's happening inside your body right now.
So the crucial point is understanding this fundamental difference: passive flexibility versus active mobility. Flexibility, it's purely passive. It is simply how far your joint moves when something else pushes it, whether that's gravity pulling you down, a stretching strap wrapped around your foot, or you just leveraging yourself against the floor. Mobility, on the other hand, is entirely active. It is how far you can move that joint yourself, strictly under your own muscular and nervous system control. And the harsh truth is, most people only ever train one of them, the passive one.
And that brings us to a frankly alarming concept highlighted in our source: the injury gap. See, when you rely only on passive stretching, your joints get pulled into this dangerous range of motion that they literally cannot control on their own. That gap, that vulnerable, unstable space between your passive flexibility and your active control, that is exactly where injuries happen. Think about your day-to-day life. Sitting at a desk for 8 hours actively causes your tissues to break down at the cellular level. Your body doesn't care that you're busy firing off important emails. It is physically adapting to the shape of that chair. When you take those tight, broken down tissues and blindly stretch them into the injury gap without giving them actual mechanical input, well, things snap. Your joints desperately need mechanical input, active, controlled movement through their full range, to stay healthy, hydrated, and resilient.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a practical solution. We're looking at a 10-minute active mobility blueprint, basically the 5-move fix. This routine provides the exact mechanical input your joints are starving for, specifically targeting the hips and the lower back. So let's break down exactly how you execute these 5 steps. We kick things off with move 1, downward dog to deep lunge. You're going to spend 1 minute on each side here. You start out in a standard downward dog position, and then you aggressively drive 1 foot forward into a deep lunge. Hold it there, maintain the tension, and then actively push back. What you're doing here is absolutely crucial. You are actively loading the hip flexor right at its extreme end range. You aren't just sinking down into a stretch and waiting for something magical to happen while gravity does all the hard work. Nope. You're demanding that your nervous system and your muscles actually control that deep position.
Next up is move 2, the kneeling Kazakh squat. Again, you'll spend 1 minute per side on this one. Now, the mechanics here are key. You take a really wide stance, drop one knee to the ground, and then consciously shift your weight laterally, side to side. Think about your anatomy for a second. Your hips naturally move in multiple directions. So why do most of us only ever stretch front to back? It's crazy. Almost nobody trains that lateral side-to-side direction. That leaves the joints incredibly stiff and vulnerable when you suddenly have to step sideways or catch your balance. Well, now you're finally going to be training it.
Move 3 is the glute bridge with rotation. You're doing a standard glute bridge, driving those hips up toward the ceiling, but right at the very top, you actively rotate your knee outward. This is a brilliant exercise because it combines hip extension and thoracic rotation into one single fluid movement. And actually, there's a fascinating anatomical fact from our source material here. Most lower back stiffness doesn't even start in the lower back. It actually starts in the thoracic spine, your mid-back. When your mid-back gets stiff from slouching all day and stops rotating, your lower back tries to cover for it. It takes on these rotational forces it was never ever designed for, and then, totally unfairly, it gets all the blame when it inevitably locks up.
Now, what's really interesting here is the specific focus on internal rotation. Move 4 is the first variation of seated hip internal rotations. You sit flat on the floor, your knees bent, feet flat on the ground, and you actively rotate both knees down to one side. Internal rotation is universally the most neglected direction of hip movement in the entire fitness world. Seriously. If your hips feel perpetually tight, despite months or even years of standard stretching, yeah, this right here is exactly why. You've been completely ignoring internal rotation.
And that leads us right into move 5, seated hip internal rotations number 2. This is the final progression to lock the whole shebang in. You're in that same seated position, but now you extend one leg out straight as you rotate the other knee inward. This seemingly tiny adjustment forces way more range of motion and puts significantly more load on the joint itself. Fair warning from our source though, this is much harder than it looks. You might let out a groan or two trying to hit this position, but you are absolutely going to feel those deep tissues working hard to control that new range.
And that is the entire routine. The magic number to remember here is 10. This whole sequence, doing each move for exactly 1 minute per side, requires exactly 10 minutes of actual focused work. Not an hour of lying around on a yoga mat, scrolling through social media, but 10 uninterrupted minutes of active, controlled mobility that literally, physically remodels your tissue.
And here is exactly why that specific time commitment matters so much. 10 minutes, daily, versus 70 minutes once a week. The research absolutely backs this up, guys. A consistent, daily 10-minute routine where you show up and provide your joints with active mechanical input, that will absolutely crush an hour-long, painful, passive stretching session done just once a week. Consistency and high frequency, that's what actually remodels cellular tissue and builds truly resilient joints over time.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative challenge. Will you commit your next 10 minutes to actual mobility? Think about it. It's time to stop passively sitting in stretches, blindly hoping that gravity is going to magically undo your years of desk work. Start taking active control of your joint health today. Show up for it consistently, give your joints the mechanical input they actually crave, and just watch how quickly your body responds. Thanks for diving into this with me, and I'll catch you on the next one.